All right, today on Free Field Training, we're going to look at the Wowtac A3. It is a zooming flashlight.
Drop the car now! Put your hands up here on the car. Up on the car. No, don't put them in your pockets. Hands up on the car. There you go. Right there.
Yeah, that's right. It's a zooming flashlight. I've never really been a huge fan of the zoomable flashlights since we went to LEDs away from incandescents. I used to use a mag light and it made a lot of sense to be able to zoom it. But these zooming flashlights that we have now that go from really wide to really narrow concentric beams have some interesting properties that we're going to talk about here today. Before we get onto the interesting properties, let's go over the light a little bit so everybody knows what it is. This is a pretty affordable light. I'm going to put the price, at least the current price, or a link to it down in the description so you can look it up. But it's definitely sub 40 bucks, the Wowtac A3. It works off of an 18650 battery, but it is like the A-Tacticals that I like so much. It has a little charging port in it, and a little red light comes on when it's charging, and the green light when it's fully charged. So you don't need a separate charger for the rechargeable battery on this light. You just plug it into a USB, which I think is pretty cool. I like that about the A-Tactical line, and I like it about this one. This light doesn't have a tail cap switch. Instead, all of the controls are through the button here, the little metal button on the head. So you push it to turn it on, and then to change lighting modes, you push and hold the button and it cycles through the modes. High is pretty high and it throws pretty well, and low is pretty low and it's pretty good for searching through stuff. Now, unlike lights that are throwers or lights that are floodlights like we've seen before, the zoomable flashlight does both. Though it doesn't throw as well as the best thrower and it doesn't flood quite as well as the best floodlight, the performance is pretty good for the ability to switch between the two. In fact, as a floodlight, I prefer this to a lot of the other floodlight flashlights that we've seen on the channel before, and I'm going to show you why here in the video. Here is the light down a standard residential alley. Now we're going to start off with it in throw mode and show you how far it throws down the alley, and then I'm going to zoom the light out. And as you see, when the light goes to its widest path, it lights the entire alley up down a pretty good ways. Now this is really good for my work, and I'm not saying this is something that a lot of people are going to use it for, but for my work this is really good for looking for small items on the ground, specifically shell casings. I had an interesting incident the other night where we were looking for shell casings along about 5 city blocks of a major street. We had to shut the street down and look for shell casings because somebody decided they were going to shoot out the window of a car. Various shenanigans ensued, but long story short, I had to go look for shell casings on this road. And the ability to zoom this out and cover half a lane of traffic at a time instead of having just the little throw spot from my normal light that I carry, the Streamlight Stinger LED, was a pretty good option to have. Now the difference with this thing in flood mode, as I'm sure you saw in the video, is that this, when it's all the way out to flood, doesn't have a hot spot and then a corona around it. It's all pretty even corona because of the way that this lens is. It's instead of being flat like most flashlights, it looks kind of like the end of a marble. Now, I am not an expert in optics, but I do know what that does, and what that does is allows it to throw a floodlight in an area that's even throughout the entire area, which makes it a lot easier to see small items on the ground. So is it a duty light? No, I don't think it's a duty light. The UI of it doesn't allow you to turn it on and off really quickly. You have to click for on, click for off. You have to cycle through modes. It does have mode memory, and it also doesn't tend to hold the position of flood or spot. So you have to turn it on, see where you're at, and then push it out or pull it in to find where you're supposed to go with it. But as a task light, it's actually pretty good. So that's my thoughts on the topic. That is the Wowtac A3. Until next week, you guys be safe and take care of each other. I'd like to thank all the Patreon supporters, and especially the Shift Supervisor level Patreon supporters that we have listed here. Your contributions are what allows Free Field Training to continue on and become better.